The sun hung low in the sky, casting an eerie golden light over the barren world below. Far above the planet, high in the silent void of space, a massive alien spacecraft floated effortlessly, its sleek metallic surface shimmering against the backdrop of distant stars. The ship was not alone. Dozens of smaller craft surrounded it, guarding the vessel as it hovered like a sentinel. Inside the ship, the atmosphere was tense, filled with anticipation and secrecy. This was no ordinary ship, and this was no ordinary mission. In the heart of the spacecraft was a grand council chamber. Long tables stretched across the room, and high walls lined with glowing symbols created an atmosphere of immense power. This was where the most important decisions of the alien race were made. The Council of Alien Leaders was gathered for an event that had not happened in centuries: the selection of a human representative from Earth to join their ranks. The humans were a curious species, primitive in many ways, yet they had shown potential in recent years. Potential that the aliens could no longer ignore. The council members were unlike any beings Leo had ever seen. Some were tall and thin, with translucent skin that shimmered like the surface of a lake at night. Others had multiple limbs or eyes that glowed with an otherworldly light, staring at Leo with an intensity that made him feel as though they could see through him. Their powers and intellect were unmatched, their technology far beyond anything on Earth. But despite all their advancements, there was something they could not understand, something that fascinated them. At the center of this council was Zana, the leader of the alien race. She was a powerful woman, not just in strength, but in influence. Her presence was commanding, and all eyes were on her as she stepped forward to speak. Her skin was a deep shade of blue, and her eyes, glowing like two bright stars, scanned the room. She was calm, collected, and held a quiet authority that made the entire room go still whenever she addressed the council. Zana had been watching humanity for years, studying their patterns, their growth, their failures. Earth was a world of chaos, a world of violence, of conflict, but also of beauty. And in the midst of it all, Zana had found something that intrigued her: a human named Leo. He was not a great warrior, nor a genius scientist. He wasn't a hero in the traditional sense. In fact, Leo was just an ordinary man, living an ordinary life. But there was something about him, something that had caught Zana's attention and kept it. The council, however, was not so easily convinced. They had always made decisions based on logic, based on facts. Strength, intelligence, and power were the qualities they valued above all else. When Zana had first suggested that they choose a human to represent Earth, there had been murmurs of doubt and disbelief. Why choose someone from a planet as chaotic and unpredictable as Earth? Why choose a species that seemed so disorganized and divided? What could they possibly bring to the table? But Zana had been firm in her decision. She believed that this human, Leo, had something the aliens did not fully understand. And so, they had brought him to the council chamber, to stand in front of them and answer the most important question of all. Why should he be the one chosen? Leo stood there, trying to keep his composure. He had been plucked from his normal life on Earth and brought to this alien world with no explanation, no idea what was happening or why. He had always believed that the world was a place of endless possibilities. But this was beyond anything he had ever imagined. Alien leaders, a grand council. And now he was about to face them. His mind raced with questions. How had he even ended up here? What did they want from him? Zana stood before him, her piercing gaze locked onto his. Her presence was overwhelming, like the weight of the universe itself was bearing down on him. She didn't speak immediately. Instead, she looked at him carefully, as though she were trying to understand him, to see what was hidden beneath the surface. The council members were watching closely. They wanted to see how Leo would react. They were curious. They were skeptical. But they were also intrigued. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. Zana finally spoke, her voice calm yet filled with authority. "Leo," she began, her words echoing in the vast chamber, "you are here today because we have been watching your kind. We have studied you, analyzed your behavior, and observed the patterns of your species. You are a young species, full of potential, but also full of conflict. Your world is a place of great chaos, but it is also a place of great beauty. We are curious to know why we should choose you, an ordinary human, to represent your people. Leo felt the weight of her words. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He was speechless. What could he say? He wasn't a scientist, or a warrior, or a philosopher. He was just a man. But then he remembered something. Something that had been a constant in his life. His ability to care for others. His love for the people around him. His empathy for those who suffered. Maybe that was the answer. Maybe that was what they saw in him. He cleared his throat and spoke, his voice unsure but steady. "I'm not special," he said. "I don't have any extraordinary skills or powers. I'm just a regular guy. But I've always tried to help when I can. I believe in the goodness of people, even when it's hard to see it. I believe that love and compassion are the things that can bring us together, even in the darkest times. Maybe that's why you chose me." The room fell silent. Xana's gaze softened, and for a moment, Leo thought he saw a flicker of something in her eyes, a recognition of the truth in his words. The council members exchanged uncertain glances. They had expected something different, something more logical, something more aligned with their own way of thinking. But Leo had given them something unexpected, something that could not be measured by intellect or power alone. Xana nodded slowly, as if processing his words. "You are right," she said after a long pause. "You are not special in the way we would expect, but you have something that many of us have lost: humanity, compassion, empathy. These are not qualities that can be quantified. They are the things that bind us together, the things that make us truly strong." Leo's heart raced. He wasn't sure if he was imagining it, but it seemed like the entire room was now focused on him. The council members, who had once looked at him with skepticism, were now listening, their expressions shifting from doubt to curiosity. For the first time since he had arrived, Leo felt a sense of understanding, as though they were beginning to see him for who he truly was. Xana turned to the council. "This human represents what is pure about your species. His ability to love, to care for others, is what will make him a valuable asset to our cause. He is not the strongest, nor the smartest, but he is a symbol of what your people can achieve if you hold on to the values of compassion and unity." The room remained silent for a long time, as the council members processed her words. They had come here expecting to choose someone powerful, someone capable of leading them into a new era of advancement. But instead, they had found something else, something deeper, something that transcended power and intellect. Xana turned back to Leo, her expression now softening. "You have been chosen, Leo," she said, "not because of what you can do, but because of who you are. You will be our representative to your world, a bridge between your people and ours." Leo's mind was spinning. He had been chosen. But for what? He was just a man. And yet in this moment he realized that his humanity, his ability to love and connect with others, was the very thing that had brought him here. As the weight of Xana's words sank in, he understood that his journey had only just begun, and whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready to face them, for this was not just about his world, but about something far greater. The council remained silent, but the tension in the room had shifted. It was no longer one of doubt, but of expectation. And as Leo stood there, surrounded by beings of unimaginable power, he knew that his life would never be the same again. The decision had been made, and with it, a new chapter for both humanity and the alien race was about to unfold. Xana stood tall in front of the council, her presence as undeniable as the stars themselves. The room fell silent as the focus shifted solely to her. Her glowing, deep blue skin shimmered under the soft lights of the chamber. She was both otherworldly and powerful, yet there was something about her that made her different from the rest of the council members. The others were cold, calculating, and distanced from the concept of emotions. But Zana carried an energy of calm confidence and quiet strength. Zana had lived for centuries, longer than most of the beings in the room. Her race, the Illyrians, were known throughout the galaxy as intelligent, powerful, and in some ways, detached from the emotions that bound other species. To them, logic and reason ruled above all. Over time, their ability to feel and empathize had diminished, leaving a society focused only on advancements in science and technology. The Illyrians no longer feared death, nor did they understand the fragility of life in the way humans did. They had mastered the art of thinking with their minds, but their hearts, their emotions, had been left behind. And that was something that Zana had always felt was a missing piece in their culture. Zana's own rise to power had been a result of her intellect and wisdom. She had grown up learning the history of her people, understanding their complexities and flaws. Her father had been the leader of their council before her, and she had always watched him from afar with admiration. He had led with a strong hand, but over time, Zana had realized that there was more to leadership than just strength and intelligence. There was something else that no Illyrian had fully understood, a power that was rooted in something much deeper than any technology or strategy could ever achieve. Her mind wandered back to the time when she had first encountered Leo. She remembered the first glimpse she had gotten of him, watching from her ship as he went about his life on Earth. Leo was different from the other humans she had observed. His life was not one of great fame or fortune, yet there was something about the way he interacted with others that stood out to her. She had watched him help strangers in the street, offer comfort to those who were struggling, and stand up for what was right, even when it wasn't easy. He didn't do it for recognition or power. He did it simply because it was in his nature. Zana had always admired that quality in others, compassion. It was a trait her people had lost, but it was something she could see clearly in Leo. She knew that she needed to understand why it was so important. For years, she had studied Earth's cultures, reading about their art, their history, their conflicts, and their triumphs. Yet, it was Leo's simplicity, his humanity, that seemed to encapsulate the very best of what his species had to offer. The council members had always been skeptical. They were not used to acting on feelings or emotions. Their decision-making process was always based on logic, on reason, on cold hard facts. They believed that emotions were a weakness, something that hindered progress and stability. But Zana didn't see it that way. She saw emotion as a force that could unite, a force that could heal. It was something that the Illyrians had long forgotten, and perhaps it was time for them to rediscover it. Zana stepped forward, her voice steady and commanding. "I have watched Leo," she began, addressing the council, "and I have seen something in him that none of you can deny." Her words were met with silence, but her gaze never wavered. It is not his strength, not his intellect, not his ability to wield advanced technology. It is something far greater than any of that. She paused, allowing her words to sink in. The council members exchanged curious glances, unsure of where this was going. Leo represents a quality that is foreign to us, but one that I believe is essential for growth. Zana continued. He represents compassion. He represents a humanity that we have lost. His ability to care for others, to sacrifice for those in need, is something that transcends all of our knowledge and technology. His heart is what makes him stronger than any of us. The room buzzed with whispers. The council members were taken aback. The idea that compassion could be more powerful than intelligence or strength was something they could hardly grasp. They had always prided themselves on their ability to control their emotions, to make decisions based on pure logic. But Zana was challenging everything they knew. "I know that this idea may be difficult for you to understand," Zana said, her voice unwavering. "But think about it. Throughout the galaxy there are many species, many races. Some are powerful, others are wise. But it is not until they learn the power of compassion that they truly begin to flourish. Leo embodies this power. He is the embodiment of a humanity that has the potential to heal and unite, not only their own world, but worlds beyond. Xana's words hung in the air, and for the first time, the council members were forced to question everything they believed. They had always been driven by the desire to advance their own species, to seek knowledge and power, but Xana was presenting an entirely different path, one rooted in human emotion, in understanding, and in love. It was a path they had never considered, a path that felt foreign and unfamiliar, yet strangely comforting. One of the council members, an alien with 4 glowing eyes and a long flowing body, spoke up. "But how can compassion help us? How can it lead us to the advancements we seek? We have no need for feelings. We are driven by logic and efficiency. Emotions only cloud our judgment." Xana looked at him with a mixture of sadness and understanding. "That is the problem," she said softly. "You have allowed logic and efficiency to consume you. You have let them define who you are. But emotions, compassion, love, empathy, these are the very things that make us more than machines. They connect us to others, to the very heart of the universe itself. Without them, we are nothing more than cold beings of intellect, disconnected from the world around us." Another council member, a tall being with multiple limbs, raised a hand. "But Xana, if we were to embrace this path, how would we lead? How would we guide our people without the certainty of reason?" Xana met his gaze, her expression soft but firm. "Guidance does not only come from reason," she said. "It comes from understanding, from seeing the world through the eyes of others. It is not enough to lead with knowledge. We must lead with our hearts. That is what will bring about true progress. That is what will make us whole again." The council members were silent, each one deep in thought. Xana had made a point that was impossible to ignore. Her words had shaken them to their core, forcing them to confront their own limitations. They had always seen themselves as the pinnacle of evolution, the greatest beings in the galaxy. But Xana was showing them a different way, a way that involved not just intelligence, but also connection, empathy, and care. Xana's heart beat faster as she watched the council wrestle with her words. She knew that this would not be easy for them to accept. They had spent so long distancing themselves from their emotions that the idea of embracing them again seemed almost unnatural. But she was certain that this was the only way forward. If the Illyrians were to truly evolve, they would have to rediscover the power of compassion. And that was why she had chosen Leo. He was the key to unlocking that path. He was the bridge between their cold, logical world and the emotional depth that had been forgotten. He represented everything the Illyrians needed to reconnect with the universe, to heal the wounds they had caused, and to become something greater than they had ever imagined. Xana looked at Leo, standing silently in the center of the room, and her heart swelled with something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. She knew that, with Leo's help, the Illyrians could rediscover the very thing that made them more than just advanced beings. They could rediscover their hearts. And perhaps, just perhaps, that would be the key to bringing balance and unity to the galaxy. As the room remained quiet, Xana's voice once again broke the silence. "This is the future of our people," she said, her tone filled with quiet certainty. "And it begins with Leo. It begins with the realization that compassion is not weakness. It is our greatest strength." The council chamber was still. The high, luminous walls that surrounded the room hummed with energy, but the room itself was frozen in silence. Each member of the council sat with a contemplative look on their face, their many eyes fixed on Xana. The tension in the air was thick, as though a storm was brewing just beneath the surface. Xana, the leader of the Illyrians, stood at the front of the room, watching as the council members struggled to process her words. They had all expected a logical answer, a calculated reason to explain why Leo, a mere human, had been chosen as their representative. But Xana's explanation had been far more than they had anticipated. For centuries, the Illyrians had valued logic, reason, and efficiency above all else. They had long ago abandoned their emotions, believing them to be weaknesses. Their civilization had evolved to rely on cold, calculated decisions, driven by the need for progress and power. The idea that compassion, something so deeply emotional, could hold more value than their superior intellect was a difficult pill to swallow. But Zana had argued that compassion was the very thing that the Illyrians needed to rediscover. It was a concept they had long since forgotten, and yet it was one that Leo, a human, seemed to embody in every aspect of his life. As the council members exchanged uneasy glances, Zana felt the weight of their doubt. She understood their skepticism. After all, they were beings of immense power, with technology that far surpassed anything on Earth. They had learned to master the universe through their intellect, their logic, and their strength. To them, emotions were a hindrance, something to be suppressed or ignored. They had never needed compassion to build their civilization. They had built it through sheer will and intelligence. But Zana knew that their way had come to an end. Without compassion, they would never evolve beyond what they already were. Zana's voice broke the silence, steady and firm. "I understand your hesitation," she began, addressing the council members. "But I ask you to consider this. We have all watched the humans for years. We have observed them from afar, seen their conflicts and their triumphs, their failures and their growth. And yet there is something that sets them apart from us, something that we cannot ignore." One of the council members, a tall figure with glowing silver skin and 4 arms, spoke up. His voice was deep, with an air of authority that made everyone in the room listen. "What is it that you see in them, Zana? What is it that makes these humans worthy of our attention? They are weak, divided, and impulsive. They fight wars over land, over resources, over differences that we cannot even comprehend. How can their emotions, their compassion, be the answer to our problems?" Zana turned to face the council member, her eyes glowing with a calm intensity. "Yes, the humans are flawed. They fight amongst themselves, they destroy their own world, and they let their emotions drive them to extremes. But in that very flaw, there is a strength that we do not possess, their capacity to feel, to love, to grieve, to hope. These are the very things that make them capable of change. It is their humanity that sets them apart from us, and it is why they are the key to our future." Another council member, a being with many eyes and a body that seemed to ripple with energy, raised a hand. "And what exactly do you expect us to do with this humanity of theirs? Are we to embrace their chaos and allow their emotions to lead us down a path of uncertainty? What is the benefit of compassion when we could be using our intellect to solve the problems of the galaxy?" Zana took a step forward, her gaze unwavering. "Compassion is not chaos, and it does not lead to uncertainty. Compassion is what binds societies together. It is what allows us to build trust, to form alliances, to help one another even when it seems impossible. Without compassion, we are nothing but isolated beings, living in our own bubble of superiority. We may be able to conquer the universe with our intellect, but without compassion, we will never truly understand the universe. We will never be able to connect with other beings in a meaningful way." The council was quiet once more, the weight of Zana's words hanging in the air. Some of the members seemed to be processing what she was saying, while others remained resistant to the idea. Zana knew that this would not be an easy task. She had spent years fighting against the prevailing mindset of her people, trying to convince them that compassion was not a weakness, but a strength. She had hoped that Leo, a human who embodied these very qualities, could be the catalyst for change. But now, in the face of such strong resistance, she wasn't sure if she could convince them. Leo, who had been standing silently at the edge of the room, felt a wave of uncertainty wash over him. He had never been a person who sought power, nor had he ever imagined himself as the key to any intergalactic peace. He was just a man, living his life on Earth, trying to make a difference in the small ways he could. He wasn't used to being the center of attention, let alone the subject of such a critical debate. But Zana had seen something in him, something that he hadn't even fully recognized in himself. Zana turned to Leo, her gaze softening. "Leo," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "this is why you were chosen. It is because you have something that the Illyrians have lost. something that is more powerful than any weapon, more enduring than any technology. You have a heart that can love, a mind that can empathize, and a spirit that can inspire. This is what makes you worthy of standing here before us. It is not your strength, nor your intellect, that sets you apart. It is your humanity. Leo blinked, unsure of how to respond. He had always considered his ability to care for others as just a part of who he was. He had never thought of it as something extraordinary. To him, it was simply natural to help others when they were in need. He had never expected that the very thing he had always taken for granted could be so highly valued by beings from another world. The council members were still silent, processing Xana's words. They were beginning to understand, but they were hesitant to embrace the idea. It was not easy to let go of centuries of tradition and belief. The Illyrians had built their civilization on the foundations of intellect and power, and now they were being asked to consider something they had long dismissed as a weakness: emotion. One of the council members, an alien with a glowing crystalline body, finally spoke. His voice was hesitant, but there was a trace of curiosity in it. "But Xana, how do you propose we use Leo's humanity to benefit us? How do we integrate compassion into a society that has thrived without it?" Xana smiled softly, her eyes glowing with a mix of hope and determination. "I don't expect you to simply accept it, not right away. But I believe that Leo can show us a new way. He can teach us what it means to connect with others, to lead with empathy rather than control. It is not about replacing logic with emotion. It is about balancing both. The Illyrians have focused too much on intellect and not enough on the heart. Leo will help us see that both are necessary for true progress." The room was still. The council members deep in thought. Xana's words had opened a door to a new way of thinking, a new way of understanding the universe. But it was clear that this path would not be easy. It would take time, effort, and a willingness to change. The Illyrians had spent so long building a civilization based on logic and power that the idea of embracing compassion was almost too foreign to comprehend. But Xana was determined. She had seen something in Leo that the others had not yet understood. She had seen the power of humanity, the strength of love, and the ability to heal even the deepest wounds. And she knew that, in time, the council would see it too. As the silence stretched on, Xana turned to the council members once more. "Leo is not just a representative for Earth," she said, her voice carrying the weight of the future. "He is a symbol of what the Illyrians can become, a symbol of a new era, one where intellect and compassion go hand in hand. It is time for us to evolve, to move beyond the limitations of our past. And Leo, a simple human, will be the one to help us do that." The council members exchanged uncertain looks, but Xana could see the shift. They were beginning to understand, beginning to accept that this new path, though uncertain, might be the only way forward. And as they considered her words, they knew that the future of their civilization, and perhaps the entire galaxy, was about to change forever. The room was filled with a heavy silence. The council members remained motionless, their eyes locked on Xana, as if expecting her to say more. The hum of the room's energy seemed to grow louder, vibrating through the air. It was as though the very walls of the chamber were sensing the tension that had settled over the Illyrian council. Xana had spoken passionately about compassion, about the power of emotions, and how they could guide their people to new heights. She had explained how Leo, a human, was the embodiment of everything the Illyrians had lost, and how he could be the catalyst for their civilization's evolution. But while Xana's words had planted a seed of possibility, it was clear that her message had not yet taken root in the hearts of her people. One of the council members, a tall, slender being with translucent skin and multiple limbs, finally broke the silence. His voice was calm but firm, as though he had been weighing Xana's words carefully. "Xana, I understand what you're trying to tell us, but we are not like the humans. We cannot simply throw away centuries of tradition and wisdom. Our civilization has thrived because of our logic, our ability to think with precision and reason. Compassion, while admirable, does not hold the same weight as the knowledge we have spent millennia perfecting. Zana nodded slowly, understanding his concerns. She knew that the Illyrians had built their empire on the foundation of logic, science, and progress. They had mastered the art of reason and had learned to suppress their emotions in order to maintain control over their world and their destiny. Emotions were viewed as distractions, weaknesses that could cloud judgment and lead to mistakes. Zana, however, had come to believe that this mindset had led her people into a dangerous state of stagnation. They had forgotten the very essence of what made them truly alive: compassion, empathy, and love. "I know that what I'm asking is not easy," Zana said, her voice calm but resolute. "I understand that the Illyrians have always relied on logic, on intellect, to guide their decisions. But I am asking you to consider this. In all our years of advancing technologically, in all our achievements, have we truly made ourselves better? Have we reached a place of peace and unity, or have we simply become more isolated and disconnected from the rest of the galaxy?" The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Zana's question was a challenge, one that cut to the core of their beliefs. For centuries, they had prided themselves on their intellectual superiority, their ability to control and dominate, to solve problems through knowledge and precision. They had never stopped to ask if their approach had led to true harmony. But now, Zana's words were forcing them to confront that very question. Another council member, this one with glowing red eyes and a thick, muscular frame, spoke up. His tone was skeptical, tinged with the arrogance that often accompanied the power of the Illyrians. "Zana, you speak of emotions as if they hold the key to our future, but you fail to address the very real dangers they present. Compassion may be a noble sentiment, but it does not protect us. We cannot rely on something as fragile as emotions when the challenges we face are as vast as the galaxy itself. Compassion will not shield us from war, from conflict, from the unknown forces that threaten our existence. It will only make us vulnerable." Zana's eyes softened, but her voice remained steady. "I do not claim that compassion alone will solve all our problems," she said, her tone gentle but firm. "I understand the dangers that lie ahead. The galaxy is full of threats, of unknown challenges, and we must be prepared to face them. But I believe that compassion can make us stronger. It can unite us, not just as a species, but as part of a larger, interconnected universe. Without compassion, we are alone, isolated in our own superiority. We may conquer the stars, but we will lose the very essence of what makes us a part of something greater." The council member with red eyes scoffed, clearly unconvinced. "And what of the other species? The ones who are not so compassionate, who do not share the same ideals? We cannot afford to trust emotions when we are surrounded by enemies who seek to destroy us. Our priority should be our own survival, not some idealistic notion of unity." Zana's gaze hardened, though her expression remained composed. "Survival is important, but it cannot be the sole purpose of our existence. If we only focus on survival, we will lose sight of what makes us more than mere machines. We are not just meant to exist. We are meant to live, to thrive, to connect with others. Without compassion, we become no better than the very enemies we fear. The same intelligence that has allowed us to dominate the galaxy can also be used to create peace, but only if we learn to see the value in each other's lives, in each other's struggles. Compassion is not a weakness. It is a source of strength, a way to move beyond fear." The room fell silent again, as the council members absorbed Zana's words. Some looked thoughtful, others still seemed resistant, their minds clinging to their long-held beliefs. The doubts were clear, and Zana could see that convincing them would take more than just a few words. She would need to show them, to make them understand just how powerful compassion could be. At that moment, another voice interrupted the quiet. It was a voice that Zana recognized all too well, one that belonged to her father, the former leader of the Illyrian Council. Though he had passed away many years ago, his memory still lingered in the hearts of many, and his influence was undeniable. A holographic image flickered into existence in the center of the room, And there, standing in front of them, was the likeness of Xana's father. His image was as imposing as it had been in life, a towering figure of authority and wisdom. His eyes, though virtual now, still seemed to pierce through the room with the weight of his years of leadership. "Xana," his voice echoed, deep and commanding. "I hear your words, and I understand the path you wish to take. But you must consider what it will cost us. Compassion is a beautiful idea, but it is not the only thing that will ensure our survival. You speak of unity, but what if that unity makes us weak? What if, in our desire to connect, we open ourselves up to forces that will destroy us?" Xana's heart clenched at the sound of her father's voice. She had respected him more than anyone else, and his words still carried the weight of years of wisdom. But she also knew that his vision had been one of control, of dominance, not understanding. She had always believed that his approach, while successful in some ways, had missed something vital. "Father, I understand your concerns," Xana said, her voice steady despite the surge of emotion inside her. "But I believe that we have reached a point where our survival cannot be the only thing we focus on. We cannot sacrifice our humanity, our compassion, just to stay safe. The galaxy is vast, and we cannot face its challenges alone. We need allies, we need understanding, and we need to learn to trust each other, even when it seems dangerous. Compassion is not about opening ourselves up to weakness. It is about embracing strength in unity." Her father's holographic form remained silent for a moment, his eyes narrowing in thought. Then, slowly, he spoke again. "Perhaps you are right, Xana. Perhaps it is time to consider a new path. But know this: the galaxy is a dangerous place. We cannot allow ourselves to be naive in the face of that danger. You must be prepared to fight, to defend what is ours." Xana nodded, her gaze unwavering. "I will be prepared, Father. But I will also fight for a world where we do not have to sacrifice our hearts in order to survive." The hologram of her father faded away, leaving the council members to reflect on what had just transpired. The room was still, the tension palpable. Xana's words had planted a seed of doubt in their minds, but she knew that they were not ready to fully embrace the idea she was offering. It would take time, patience, and perhaps even more proof that compassion was not a weakness, but a force that could unite and empower. As the meeting drew to a close, Xana looked around the room. Some of the council members had softened, their expressions thoughtful. Others remained unconvinced, their doubts still heavy in their hearts. But Xana knew that the seeds of change had been planted. She had made them question their beliefs, to look beyond the logic and intellect that had guided their civilization for so long. And while the path ahead was uncertain, Xana was determined. She would not back down. She would fight for the future of the Illyrians, a future where compassion, intelligence, and strength could coexist. She would prove to them, to the galaxy, that the greatest power of all was not in the cold, calculating mind. It was in the warm, beating heart. The silence in the chamber had become deafening. Xana had spoken with passion, and the council had responded with skepticism. But now there was a new feeling in the air, a heavy weight that seemed to settle over everyone present. The Illyrians were not used to feeling uncertain, not used to being challenged in this way. They had spent centuries building a society based on logic, strength, and reason, but now they were being asked to consider something entirely different: compassion, emotion, humanity. And standing in the center of it all was Leo, a human who had been thrust into the heart of this debate, though he never expected to be part of something so monumental. Leo felt his palms grow sweaty as he stood in the corner of the council room. He had been silent through most of the meeting, his mind swirling with confusion and disbelief. How had he ended up in this position? Just a few days ago, he had been living his normal life on Earth, never imagining that his world was so connected to the galaxy beyond. Now, he was the focal point of a debate that could change the course of an entire civilization, and the pressure was starting to weigh on him. The Illyrians were so different from humans, so much more advanced, so much more powerful. They had the ability to manipulate energy, travel across galaxies, and create technology that was beyond anything Leo could even comprehend. But they didn't seem to understand what it meant to be human. The messiness, the complexity, the beauty of emotion. Leo wasn't sure if he was even the right person for this. He was just a man with a simple life, a life that had been turned upside down the moment he met Zana. Yet here he was, being asked to show them what it meant to feel. Zana noticed Leo's discomfort, and her heart ached for him. She could see the way his shoulders tensed, the way his eyes darted nervously around the room. She knew he wasn't used to this kind of attention, especially not from beings so different from him. But he was stronger than he realized, and she believed in him. He had the power to change everything, to show the Illyrians that there was more to life than logic and power. Compassion was a force, a strength, and Leo embodied that strength in a way that no one else could. She turned to the council, her voice firm but gentle. We have discussed the importance of compassion, of humanity. But we cannot forget that Leo is not just a symbol. He is a person. He has his own fears, his own doubts, and his own struggles. And yet, he is here, standing before us, because he believes in something greater than himself. The council members remained silent, their gazes fixed on Zana. Leo could feel their eyes on him, their expectations heavy. They wanted answers. They wanted to understand why Zana had chosen him. He could feel the weight of their scrutiny, and it made him nervous. Zana gave Leo a small, encouraging smile before she spoke again. Leo, would you like to share with us why you chose to be here? What is it that drives you to stand before us today, knowing the risks, knowing that your world may never be the same again? Leo swallowed hard, trying to find the words. He had never been good at speaking in front of crowds, let alone an alien council that had the power to change the course of history. But Zana was giving him the opportunity to speak, to explain himself. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. I don't know if I'm the right person for this, he began, his voice trembling slightly. I'm just a guy from Earth. I never asked for any of this. I never asked to be part of something so big. But when I met Zana, when I learned what was really happening, about the Illyrians, about the galaxy, it made me realize something. He paused, his gaze drifting to the floor as he gathered his thoughts. I realized that for all our differences, we're not so different after all. Leo continued. Humans, we're not perfect. We make mistakes. We fight with each other. We hurt each other. And sometimes it feels like we're on the brink of destroying everything we've built. But we also have the ability to love, to care, to help each other when we're at our lowest. And that's what I think is worth fighting for. Not just for survival, but for something more. His voice grew stronger as he spoke, as though the words were coming from somewhere deep inside him. I don't have the answers to everything. I don't have some grand plan to save the galaxy. But I believe that if we can all learn to care for each other, to show compassion, maybe we can make the world, a galaxy even, a better place. I don't know if that's enough, but it's what I believe. There was a long pause as Leo finished speaking. His heart was racing, and his hands were still trembling slightly, but he felt a sense of relief wash over him. He had said what he needed to say, even if he didn't have all the answers. He was just one man, one human, but his heart was full of the kind of love and compassion that Zana had talked about. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The council members remained silent for a moment, absorbing Leo's words. Their eyes, which had once been filled with doubt, were now softer, more contemplative. Zana watched them closely, hoping that they were beginning to understand. Compassion wasn't something that could be measured or quantified. It wasn't a strategy, a weapon, or a tool. It was a force that lived within every being, a force that could bind people together, heal wounds, and create change. Finally, it was the same council member who had questioned Zana earlier, the one with the glowing red eyes, who spoke up. His voice was quieter this time, less dismissive, more thoughtful. I see now that there is a kind of power in what Leo has said, he admitted. It is not a power that can be measured by our intellect, nor is it something that can be easily controlled. But perhaps it is something we must learn to embrace. Compassion may not be a weapon, but it is a force nonetheless, and maybe that is what we have been missing all along. Xana's heart lifted at his words, though she knew there was still much more to be done. The Illyrians were not ones to change overnight, and their doubts would not be easily erased. But this was a step forward, a small victory in a battle that she had been fighting for so long. Another council member, one with a body that shimmered like liquid metal, spoke next. "I still have concerns," he said, his voice filled with the weight of his own experiences. "Compassion is not enough to guarantee survival in a galaxy as harsh as ours. But perhaps it can be the foundation for something greater. Perhaps it can be the key to creating the alliances we need, to finding ways to work together, even with those who are not like us." Xana nodded, grateful for his openness. Exactly. Compassion does not replace strength or intellect. It complements them. It allows us to see beyond our own narrow perspectives, to understand the needs of others, and to find common ground even in the face of conflict. Leo, who had been listening quietly, now felt a sense of connection with these beings. Despite their vast differences, they were beginning to understand, beginning to see the value in what he had said. And in that moment, he realized that he was not just an outsider in this strange galaxy. He was a part of something much bigger, something that could change everything. The weight of Leo's heart, the compassion that he had always carried with him, was no longer something that made him feel small. It was a strength, a power that was beginning to resonate with others. And as the council continued to deliberate, Leo knew that, even though the path ahead was uncertain, his place in it had been secured. He was here to help them see the light, a light that came from within, from the heart. It was a force that no amount of intellect or technology could ever replace. And with that thought, Leo stood tall, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that the true power of the galaxy was not in its weapons or its technology. It was in the hearts of those who dared to care. The days after the council meeting passed in a blur for Xana and Leo. What had begun as a small seed of change had started to grow, sending ripples through the Illyrian society. The council, though still hesitant, had agreed to take the first steps toward embracing compassion as a guiding principle. It was a monumental shift, one that would require time, effort, and patience, but it was a beginning, a new beginning for the Illyrians and their relationship with other species in the galaxy. Xana had been both hopeful and cautious. While some members of the council had begun to understand the value of compassion, there were still many who were deeply entrenched in their old ways of thinking. The Illyrians were not easily swayed, and their pride in their intellect and power was not something that could be undone with a single conversation. But Xana believed that change was possible. She had already seen the glimmer of understanding in the eyes of some of the council members, and that was enough to keep her going. Leo, on the other hand, felt a sense of confusion and awe. He had never imagined that his life would lead him to this point. He was just an ordinary human from Earth, and yet here he was, caught in the middle of a debate that could change the fate of an entire civilization. But as the days passed, he began to realize that his role in all of this was more important than he had ever imagined. He had become a symbol, a living example of the power of compassion. And though he still struggled with self-doubt, he knew that he couldn't back down now. Xana had made it clear to Leo that his presence was not just symbolic. The council had,